Shabbos, everyone. Let's begin. So first, Yashikach to my sheep for picking up the food tonight. Yashikach to John Kaplan, for Jonathan Kaplan for making some of the poppers. Knish Shop for making the rest of the poppers. Baruch Hashem, we have popper selection tonight, Chalban selection tonight. Baruch Hashem, but an incredible schus to be able to usher in the Erev Shabbos together. We're going to continue Mir Hashem this evening, learning the Torah of the Chalban. So we left off on last week on page Memhei. There should be sheets around if anyone needs. Hopefully, it should be enough. So we left off on page Memhei, and it was here that the Chalban, remember again, was talking about the Yisod. Was everybody has sheets who needs? Good. Okay. Bring to our front of Jacob if anyone needs any extra. So I'll say. So remember again, the Chalban introduced us to this idea, and I think what's really incredible about learning this sefer, hopefully everybody's feeling it also, is not a week goes by that you don't find something that just fundamentally challenges the way that you think. Right? We think we have such clarity. Right? From the first week, when again the Chalban turned the whole yisod of Panemius and Chitzonius literally upside down, inside out. He literally turned Panemius and Chitzonius inside out. every week it's been something else. So last week we began this beautiful idea, a powerful idea of what he called Tzimtzum HaTorah B'Galus. The idea that Torah in Galus is fundamentally different than the Torah in Geula. So remember again, on the end of page Memdal, we didn't get so far last week, but in the end of page Memdal, if you remember again, the Chalban said, how would you describe Torah in Geula? Geula Torah. How would you describe it? So remember again, he had one phrase, Hine Elyona Hi Ma'od. That's how he described Torah of Geula. It's high. It's the highest of high. Elyona Hi Ma'od. And it's almost as if the Chalban was saying that, that there are things in this world, we spoke about this last week, there are things in this world that are so profound that they often just kind of defy description. They defy description. We remember I gave the mashal, like when you want to tell your kids or you want to tell, your spouse how much you love them. You could say, I love you very much. But do those words really capture the totality of the way you feel about your loved ones? And of course the answer is no. So the Chalban says, you want me to describe Torah of Geula? How could I describe the Torah of Geula? How could I describe that? Okay, El Yon Nehi Ma'od. It's really incredible. So we'll say with that, we're picking up on page Memhei. And look what he writes over here. This is the first full paragraph on page Memhei. He says, Hahevdel ben Yisrael b'Galus ben Yisrael b'Geula. So the Chalban says that the difference between Am Yisrael in Galus versus Am Yisrael in Geula, Hu Yoser Gadol, look what he writes, Hu Yoser Gadol, Mehevdel Shabein Hakatan Sha'ach Nolad L'Gadol U'Ba Bayamim. So it's very profound. See, you would think that if somebody were to ask you, describe the difference between Klal Yisrael in Galus and Klal Yisrael in Geula, a good mashal would be, maybe Klal Yisrael in Galus is like a young child, versus Klal Yisrael in Geula is like a mature adult. A mature adult. So the Chalban says, the distinction between Am Yisrael and Galus and Geula is so dramatic that it's even more different than between a child and an adult. Zehevdil, listen to what he writes, Zehevdil, Shebein Misa L'Chayim. The difference between Am Yisrael and Galus and Am Yisrael and Geula is mamish as stark as the difference between life and death itself. The difference between life and death. So you both say, what is he saying? What's the chap when he compares life and death? There's no overlap between life and death, right? There's no similarities between life and death. You compare a child to an adult, there's similarities. It's the same eyes, it's the same ears, it's the same nose, a little bit bigger, a little bit weaker, a little bit this, but it's the same those. When you compare life and death, there's no overlap. There's no comparison. So the Chalban says, you want to compare Am Yisrael's state of being in Galus and Geula, it's like comparing someone who's alive and someone who's dead. He goes on, he says, She'im shum hevdelim bein matzavi chayim, shechol mishtavos. There's no overlap. There's no comparison between life and death. So just like there's no comparison, there's no overlap between life and death, there's no comparison, there's no overlap between the Jew in Geula and the Jew in Galus. Kach, listen to what he writes. Bizman shebeis hamikdash haya kayim, we're both saying, I'll just tell you by way of, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Zechusa Yogin Aleinu. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was one of the people of Rabbi Akiva, saved Klal Yisrael after the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted two different types of takanas. There's a concept of Zecher L'Churban and Zecher L'Mikdash. See, often we think those things are synonymous, but they're not. Zecher L'Churban, a good example of Zecher L'Churban, is that when you're building your home, you should leave an amma by amma space. Oh, there's a whole Torah why you don't see that. In Eretz Yisrael, you see it much more. Chutz La'aretz, you don't see it as much. Okay, there's a lot of Torah on that, not for now. But that's Zecher L'Churban. To remember that which was lost, to remember that which was destroyed. And then there's Zecher L'Mikdash. What's an example of Zecher L'Mikdash? That we take Lulav and Esrog, Kol Shiva. Right? Again, remember, Me'ikar Adin, you only take Lulav and Esrog one day. The Beis HaMikdash, they would take it all 7 days. So too again, now in the absence of the Beis HaMikdash, we take Lulav and Esrog all 7 days as well. So we'll say, what's the chilik between Zecher L'Churban and Zecher L'Mikdash? What's the distinction? So Rabbi Soloveitchik explains so beautifully, a very tifazach, right? A very sharp distinction. He says that the Zecher L'Churban is there to amplify feelings of pain. Zecher L'Churban is there to make you mourn that which you miss. So I walk into my home and I see an amma by amma, or I see, something that's there, Zecher L'Churban. I walk into my house, it reminds me, Meshkachech Yerushalayim. My home is beautiful, Baruch Hashem. My home is built, but the emotional home is not. So it's there to accentuate and amplify pain. Zecher L'Mikdash is there to stoke the fire of anticipatory yearning and pining for that which will be. So why do I take lulav and esrog all 7 days? To remind myself of that which was done in the mikdash. Not to make myself mourn over that which has been lost, but to make myself yearn, intensely yearn for that which will be. I'm sharing this because when the Chalban contrasts Geula with Galus, Rabbi saying, the goal of this, I want to be very clear. The Chalban's goal is not to make us feel bad. Right? The Chalban's goal is not to make us go and say, oh, we're in Galus. The Chalban's goal is to paint a picture of Geula so that we know what we're yearning for. So that we know what we want, the goal, right? How do you know if it's been a good year? Well, if you're full, I guess that's one metric, right? Good, it's one part. I would say, but like, if I walk away from the sefer, if I close the sefer and I say, you know what? I want Geula just a little bit more. I want Mashiach just a little bit more. Now I could taste it. I could feel it. I know a little bit what it's like. That's the Chalban's trying to do. Look what he writes. He says, Kach, Bizman Shebeis HaMikdash Hayakayim. Haisa, listen to this description. Haisa haneshama me'ira baguf shalim v'chai. When the Beis HaMikdash stood, the neshama was the dominant force over the body. Now I will say, now again, this came up a little bit last week. The Chalban's not suggesting that throughout the entire time of the Beis HaMikdash it was like this. Remember again, the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. And it was destroyed because there was obviously a profound decline of Klal Yisrael. But at the end of the day, when you have the Mikdash, you have the ability to reach this level where the neshama becomes the dominant partner in the body-soul partnership. Also, do you know what that? Do we even know what that means? This goes back to today's daf. Right, Baruch Hashem, we get a Mazel Tov. Today we finished Maseches, we finished Moed Katan. And remember, how does the Gemara describe death? The Gemara describes it as how? Pulling a knotted rope through a hole. In other words, friction. Frictions. According to the Maharsha this morning, who says, but yet the Gemara elsewhere says that it's like pulling a hair out of milk. It's been a shika. So what's the pshat? So the Maharsha said very beautiful. Ben Yehuda also brings down this idea. He says everything depends on your body-soul relationship. If your body is the dominant force, the Gashmius is the dominant force, death is painful. Because the body doesn't want to let go of the soul. Because the body can't exist without the soul. And the body wants to continue to exist. But if the neshama is the dominant piece of who I am, then the body has no control over the neshama. The body has to let go. The body has to let go because the neshama has a higher calling. So I will say, Bizman Beis HaMikdash. Wait, isn't this the struggle we have every single day? Every day there's a tug of war for my essence. Who's going to win? Is it going to be my body, my guf, my carnal desires, or my wants, or my neshama? And this is a tug of war. I will say, let's be honest. Some days the neshama wins. Most days the body wins. Most days the body wins. The Chalban says, you know what the power of Geula is? The power of Geula is a state of being where the neshama is the dominant force. The neshama is the thing that guides me. The neshama is in the driver's seat. He goes on, he says, V'hainu shashchina haisa mefacha b'chol levavos. Person would feel during Geula, the essence of Geula is that a person feels the Shechina churning inside of him. But can you imagine what that feels like? You know, we have moments like that. We have moments like that where I feel the Shechina inside of me. Moments like that where I feel like the neshama is in control. But it's episodic. For most of us, it's episodic. Right? Most times, it's not like that. Well, in Geula, that's the norm. That's the norm. Memela, Hanavu Azarcha Ba'ora, Ad Shahayu Yisrael Devukim Madregas Nisos, Lahargish Es Habias Chayem Ha'achos. And then what happens? Klal Yisrael, again, there's Nevuah, there's prophecy, and Klal Yisrael finds themselves elevated to the highest level. And I must remember again, what's the highest level for Klal Yisrael according to the Chalban? What's the highest level? Oneness. When all the parts understand that their dominant feature is to be part of the whole. Where the limbs recognize that their highest calling is not to be individual limbs, but ultimately, again, to be part of the body. That's what Geula is. Kegai Shalim, to be a complete nation who understands that the essence of its life is to be a friend, a beloved Reya of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kimavuta b'shir hashirim shenichtav bios hashchina b'shleimusa b'binyan Shlomo HaMelech. I both say, right, Shir Hashirim. So the Chalban says, you want to know what Geula is like? Read Shir Hashirim. Read Shir Hashirim. I will say, Shir HaShirim is one of the strangest books of Tanakh, right? No one knows what to do with it, right? No one knows, right? Art Scroll sanitized the whole thing, right? It's like, right? If you could speak Hebrew, you have no idea where the Art Scroll translation comes from, because it doesn't seem to. Now again, that goes with the approach that it's a metaphor. I will say, but it's not an accident. It's not an accident that Shlomo HaMelech wrote Shir HaShirim ultimately as an intense, passionate love song between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. That's what it is. It's in essence. It's an intense love song between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. So I will say, at the end of the day, says the Chalban so profoundly, at the end of the day, that's what Geula is. This intense connection, this intense relationship, this intense devekos. Ba'osher, Chaya HaKadosh Al HaMikdash V'Nevuah. So says the Chalban, when one leads an enriched life of Mikdash, of Nevuah, Hirgish Kol Yachid Mi Yisrael es Mashmaos Chayov Bigdulas Atzuma. But say, look how beautiful this is. The Chalban goes on, he explains that at the end of the day, when we're in this state of Geula, there's another piece. Everyone feels the purposefulness of their existence. Everyone feels that they. Look at his lashon over here. Every person sees the essence of his life as something so meaningful, so significant, so profound. He sees himself as a spark of the torch, that torch which illuminates the world in its entirety. I will say, isn't this incredible? The truth is, if you're a little bit cynical, what do you think you're right about now? Right? What are you thinking right about now? Right? No one wants to say, because you can't be cynical in the Chassidus Chaburah. I will say, but if you're cynical, you're like, come on, where do you get this from? Where is this coming from? I will say, and the simple answer is, it doesn't matter. The Chalban said it, he was a Makubal, he's a great tzaddik, and so it's true. And so we go with it, and And I will say, I want to just tell you something. Part of the beauty of this is, when you put your mind to the side, and you open your heart and your soul. This is not an exercise in the intellect. I will say, if you let these words course through your neshama, and listen to how the Chalban describes Geula. I will say, can you imagine going through life feeling like you matter all of the time? So many of us go through life and we don't think we matter. We just don't think we matter. Some of us actively feel that way in a conscious state. Others feel it in a subconscious state. But a feeling of like being extra. Like, what am I doing here? Would the world really miss me if I wasn't here? Have I moved the needle in any way in the world? Do I make a difference? Do I make an impact? Or do I simply exit? I'll tell you something. I had an interesting interaction with someone a couple of weeks ago where I called someone. I just was calling a person regarding a particular issue. And he's like, oh, I'm happy you finally called me. And I said, okay. He's like, I haven't been in shul for the last week and a half. And you didn't call me. And so, like most of us, my first reaction is always to get defensive. Oh, right, because there's only 9 people in shul, right? And you were the center. So, we were waiting for you. I should have realized. And then I realized, like, wow. Some people need to be noticed, not als gaiva, because they just want to know deep down. What this guy was saying deep down was, I guess it don't really matter. I guess now, of course, it's not true. Everybody matters, but again, it's chatani maski. You can't see everyone all the time. But what a profound yesod! This is the guy, an accomplished individual. Baruch Hashem. He just wanted to know that he matters. That he matters to his Rav, to his shul, to his this. Was so profound. Everybody wants to matter. And so in Geula, it's apparent that I matter. In Geula, it's clear that I matter. The Chalban goes on. Look what he writes. And we'll say this is incredible. He says, HaShabbos, we're going to be doing this sefer for a very long time, by the way, I realize, right? Let's say with this, because again, it's just so beautiful. HaShabbos, HaTfilin, VeHaTzitzis, Talmud Torah, ve'esek ha-mitzvah. So all the mitzvahs, kimo, gam ha-melocha, ubinyan ha'aretz, hayu yachtov lenimim vegidim be'ilan rav serigim. Rachav yadayim shenichlalu bo kol b'Yisrael kaviyah achas. See, I will say, think about this just a moment. You do a mitzvah, you put on tefillin. Right? Who are you benefiting when you put on tefillin? Who are you benefiting? So remember again, Gullus mentality, right? Gullus mentality is chitzonius. So who am I benefiting when I put on tefillin? Me. And by the way, that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. But the Chalban says, oh my gosh, that's like a tipa shibatipin. That's a drop in what it means. When there's geula, we recognize that every single thing we do, yes, it benefits us as individuals, but we recognize the collective power of our mitzvos. Again, the imagery here is so beautiful. And it's not just mitzvos, malacha. We'll say malacha. It's interesting that kind of most of us kind of walk around with two identities, right? We have an identity, it's like my work identity and my ruchni identity. My work identity is what I do to make a living. What do I do to make a living? If I could help out a little bit here, help out a little bit there, I make money, I could give tzedakah, or in my industry I help do favors for people. But there's my work identity, and then there's my ruchnius. And what's my ruchnius? My ruchnius is my shir, is my learning, is my davening, is tefillah b'tzibur, that's all the different things. In geula, I recognize it's ha b'hatalya. Because when the Jew works, and the Jew works in a meaningful and upright and honest way, it's not just the pshat that I'm earning a living. I'm building the world. But in Gullus, you don't see it. So part of the other dynamic of Geula is I begin to see that all of my mitzvahs, everything I'm doing in different ways, contributes to the totality of the harmony of the world. He goes on, he says, Imam, heiru b'chol oz kol matmoni haTorah. Sisareha b'razeha b'iyichudei kodesh b'chachmas hanavua v'hara'asa v'hayu Yisrael lom. So I'll say furthermore, Torah is different in Geula than it is in Galus. Why? See, Torah in Galus, and we're going to talk about this today a lot. Emir Hashem. Torah in Galus is just a surface Torah, not superficial, chas v'shalom, but a surface Torah. But there's a whole body of nistar, a whole body of hidden Torah, that again, we access it through Zohar, through Kabbalah, through Chassidus. But I will say, today, the pursuit of nistar is kind of much more peripheral pursuit, or additional pursuit. It's not a primary pursuit. In Geula, all of the levels of Torah are exposed to everyone. He goes on, he says, V'hayu Yisrael lomdim es sod nishmasam. I'll say each of these lines is a shir by itself. And what happens in Geula? Geula, we discover the secret of our neshamas. I will say, because each and every one of our neshamas has a sod, has a secret. Not a secret that you're keeping from someone else, but a secret dimension of holiness that we have yet to access. We look at ourselves and so often we just think of ourselves as ordinary, as irregular, as run-of-the-mill. But the neshama holds so many secrets, so much depth, so much profundity, so much holiness. Ad lahasagas nevuah kiflaim kiyotzim Mitzrayim. What was they quoting the Gemara Maseches Megillah? The Gemara discussed, we saw it not so long ago in Daf Yomi. The Gemara says that there were more Nevi'im for Klal Yisrael, Yoser, Kiflaim Kiotim Mitzrayim. More than 2 times the number of people left Egypt, which would put it at, there are 600,000 men, over 1 million Nevi'im. Right, so remember this Gemara. So the Gemara says, so what happened to all of their Nevuahs? Why aren't they recorded? So the Gemara says, Nevuah that has a future impact ultimately was recorded. Nevuah that only had an episodic, temporary impact was not recorded. In Geula, when I access the hidden levels of Torah, when I access the secret of my neshama, Nevuah becomes the purview of everyone. Nevuah becomes the purview of everyone. Nevuah representing that deep dialogical connection with the Ribono Shel Olam. Everyone has access to it. Turn to page Membav. He goes on. B'metzias adira zu shel gilui shechina. So let's listen to this. In this level of page Memvav, in this level of Gilui Shechina, of revelation of the divine, we'll say this is incredible. This is incredible. Says the Chalban, in Yemos HaMashiach, in Geula, we're not going to use the word Yemos HaMashiach, we're going to use the word Geula because that's the word he's using. In the world of Geula, there's no discussion about reasons or purposes of mitzvahs. Let's say, wrap your head around this one. There's no discussion of reason or purpose behind mitzvah. Why not? Or for that matter, a reward. So no discussion of reward, no discussion of purpose, no discussion of reason. How could that be? How could that be? Doesn't man naturally yearn to understand things? Ki hoyu yisrael ro'im olamim b'chayehem. Beziv HaKodesh asher beveis Hashem. Shespashet l'chol merchavi haaretz v'rom gov ho iskala ba'aliyah sa'am kulo l'regel. Because we'll say at the end of the day, when in Geula, there's going to be such clarity. There's going to be such a clarity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, such a clarity of the secret of our neshamas, such a clarity of Torah, that the notion of why, of what, of how, of what do I get, those questions fall by the side. And I will say, now I think what the Chalban is saying is like this. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to understand everything. What do you think the Chalban is describing here? What is he describing? What does he mean when in Geula there's no questions about meaning or reward or this, that? Why not? Why not? What do you think?
Because we have this infinite understanding and trust.
Because that's what it is. I'll give you I'll give you a simple example. Right? If you tell your child, "I love you," and your child says, "Well, why do you love me? Why do you love me?" Right? And children don't usually ask that. Parents sometimes ask that. Why do I love this kid? Right? Right? So imagine the child asks you, "Why do you love me?" So what does a parent answer? What does a parent answer? Imagine you go home, you tell your kid you love them, and they say, "Well, why? Why?" What's your answer? Because I do. Because I do. And I understand why I do. I can't articulate it, and the truth is, it's not necessary to articulate it. It's not necessary to articulate why a parent loves a child. It's not necessary. It may be sometimes necessary to articulate why a child loves a parent. It's a different kind of love. But why a parent loves a child, no articulation is necessary because it's clear. Now, both sides, if somebody were to press you and to tell you, no, I want you to write an essay, right, double space, 2 pages, right, about why you love your child, I think it would actually be hard. I think actually, like, what are you going to say? They're cute. They make me laugh. Think about it, like, because there are certain things that it's true. It's true. It's MS. You want me to explain it rationally and intellectually? I don't know that I can actually do that. But just because I can't articulate it intellectually does not mean that it's not true. The truth is, it's actually truer than anything. The love I have for my child is probably the truest thing that exists in this world, even though I can't explain it at all. I could give basic ideas, but I can't explain the depth of. So the Chalban explains in Geula, when all of these things that he described, they're going to be happening over here. There's just the clarity. So what's the reward for mitzvahs? I don't know, but like it doesn't. What do you get for loving your child? No, I don't know. I guess I get something. I'm sure I do get something from it. But it's not bala inyan. I'm not thinking about it. That clarity takes away the need for an understanding of the why, of the what, and of the rewards. Ilu hayu aperos hamasukim shel avodas hakodesh zorim meirim b'tachlisam v'soch chaye olam hazeh. Ultimately, again, because at the end of the day, the sweetness of Torah, the beauty of Torah, the gift of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all of that becomes so clear and apparent that a rationale or a reasoning behind it simply becomes unnecessary. On both sides. Do you hear this? What a! It's hard to even wrap our head around it also, because we're going to see, by the way, that in Gullus we've backed into a different form of Torah. Let's go on a little bit. He says, Lefichach. He says something amazing. Both sides, get ready for this. Lefichach. Lo simtza b'sifrei hanavua dibuk ve'esek b'chayu olam haba. This is incredible. Does you ever wonder, why is there no discussion of olam haba? Right? It's one of the Rambam's Yud Gimel Ikari Emunah. Again, I'll just point out, not everyone agrees with the Rambam's 13 principles, right? First of all, not everybody agrees that there's a concept of principles of faith. There are mitzvos, there are commandments, but the Rambam has Yud Gimel Ikarim, right? And in those Yud Gimel Ikarim is belief in Olam Haba. Why doesn't it appear anywhere? Forget about Chumash. Right? Forget about Chumash. We'll say not one reference. Okay, there's a veiled reference here and there. Not one reference to Olam Haba. What's the pshat? Look what he writes. And we'll say, furthermore, think about this. I will say, and this is such a profound yisod. How do we relate to Olam Hazeh? Right? Think about this. What's our relationship to this world? What's our relationship? How do we view? How does the Jew view this world? Temporary, right? What's the lashon Chazal and Pirkei Avos? Right? It's a prusdar. It's a traklin. Right? It's a hallway. Right? It's a traklin though. So that's how you view it. Why is that concept never mentioned? Right? We'll say it's a mission of us. But what isn't that like one of the foundational stones of Yiddishkeit? That this world is but an antechamber. Right? That this world is but a traklin. That this world is but a prusdar. Right? Both words used in the Mishnayos. So shouldn't that be articulated somewhere in Tanakh? So look what the Chalban says. He says, Ki kisheziva olam haba meir ba'olam hazeh ba'ashras shchina al yona bebeis Hashem ubemaros nevuah lekamos tzuma. Because the Chalban says something amazing. Because when we reach the level of Gula, you see, the Yid's goal is never to get to Olam Haba. I will say, I'm not in a rush to get to Olam Haba on many levels. We just discussed this morning in Daf Yomi, right? I think it was this morning. The problem with giving share at 5:45. I was not sure which day it was. Right? So we saw it this morning. 6:44 I did this. Thank you. Not that anyone's keeping count. Yeah. Go to the Bashach. You knows we started at 6:47 this morning. So I'll put this something interesting. I mentioned this morning. Rav Sham Shnofal Hirsch brings down, and he says that it's a fascinating dynamic that by churches, you'll often find cemeteries attached to churches. But by shuls, you do not find cemeteries attached. As I mentioned, if you go to Europe, especially Eastern Europe, you'll often find cemeteries attached to shuls. Like if you go to the Ramah Shul, right, in Krakow, right, so there's a famous cemetery there, the Ramah is buried there, Tosas Yamtiv is buried there, a lot of great tzaddikim are buried there. I will say, but again, that was a din in land ownership. That was that the Jewish community got a parcel and pretty much used it for anything and everything. So if Hirsch says, why don't we put cemeteries next to shuls? Why not? So I'll say it's a simple answer. Because Rav Hirsch says, Yiddishkeit is a life-affirming religion. Because we don't view our mission as getting to Olam Haba. That's not my mission. I know a life will come to an end. I know that one day I'll die and I'll leave this world. And I have to be ready to accept that and ready to give din v'cheshbon on my life. But I'm in no rush. That's not my goal. My goal is not to get to Olam Haba. The Chalban says, you're right. That's why Olam Haba is never mentioned. Olam Haba is never mentioned in Tanakh. Because my goal is not to get there. But I do have a goal to get somewhere. Where's my goal to get to? Geula. That's my goal. Right? My goal is to get from Gullus to Geula. Olam Haba, it'll come. I hope that I'm ready. I hope to lead a virtuous enough life that I have entry. But that's not really where I'm focused on. That's not really where I'm going. Where I want to get to, is I want to get to Geula. And therefore the Chalban says, Ki kisheziva olam haba meir ba'olam hazeh. Because when look at these words, when the light of the world to come shines into this world, Bashros shchina al yona bebeis Hashem, ubemaros nevuah lekamos atzuma shel neviim. And I will say, when does the light of Olam Haba shine into Olam Hazeh? Take a wild guess. When does that happen? Geula. Part of the hallmark of Geula, I will say, is almost as if there's like an alignment between Olam Haba and Olam Hazeh. And the light of Olam Haba shines into this world. And he said before, as a result, there's a proliferation of prophecy. Because once I find the sod, the secret of my neshama, then suddenly again prophecy becomes rampant. Kiflaim kiyotzi mitzrayim, lo hayu tzrichim klal ledaber al schar hamitzvus umashmaos kiyuman. Hatachlis v'aschar hayu meirim begilu yiravu bebehirus. The Chalban says something amazing. Chazal, Tanakh was not focused on Olam Haba. Because the goal is not to get to the world to come. The goal is to get to Geula. Because once I get to Geula, there's an alignment between the world of Geula and Olam Hazeh. There's an alignment between Olam Haba and Olam Hazeh. And that light of Olam Haba shines into this world. And it's that light, I will say, that allows me to discover again the secret of my neshama, to find the deeper dimensions of Torah, to recognize that I'm a part of the whole, proliferation of prophecy, and suddenly everything becomes clear. So the Torah doesn't focus really all that much on reward for mitzvos, doesn't focus all that much, ultimately again, on Olam Haba, because the goal is get to Geula. Get to Geula. And if I could only just get to Geula, then all of the theological pieces fall into place. Kach hayalanu. So we'll say, the Chalban says, and by the way, see, I will say, and this is a very important point. Lest you think that we're describing some future state that we never experienced before, it's not true. Chalban says, Kach hayalanu b'yosem ba'oshech hayenu. We had this state. We had this state of being ready. We experienced this. Begadlus hamochinu ba'ashpas hakodesh rabanu. V'hinei bagalus olam chashav b'nenu. So also we had this. We're going to see when Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis Hamikdash. Also we just had this in Daf Yomi. It's a good plug for that. Everything's in Daf Yomi. It's incredible. Also we just had this. The year that Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis Hamikdash. Remember again, the Gemara says they didn't fast on Yom Kippur. Do you know what that means, not to fast on Yom Kippur? No, none of us know what it means not to fast on Yom Kippur. Barring chas v'shalom, illness, and that. Whoever heard of such a thing like this? They didn't fast on Yom Kippur. The world was different. The world was different. The light of Olam Haba shined down into Olam Hazeh. They figured out the Sod and Shabbat. We experienced this. Now again, as I don't know, maybe it was Nehemiah brought it up last week. One of the important things to remember is just because you have it doesn't mean you can't lose it, right? We had it, right? We had it, but we lost it. So don't think we're talking about some esoteric future event for which we have no frame of reference. We've had periods in our history like this. Begadlus hamochinu b'ashmaskar v'hinei begalus olam chashach ba'adenu. And now, unfortunately, we lost it. With the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, with diaspora, the world has become a darker place. Nistalka hashchina. The Shechina is removed. Now we'll say what that means is the Shechina is not removed. The Shechina is very much with us here. But it's a different kind of revelation. It's a different kind of relationship. Now we'll say sometimes when a relationship is fractured, there might be an incredible amount of love that's there, but the relationship takes on a different form. We'll say you see this all the time. This is like a typical mistake that people make in relationships, right? Which is, you wrong someone. You could fill in this someone, whoever the someone you want it to be. Your spouse, your friend, your parent. And what happens? You realize you did something wrong. So what do you do when you realize you did something wrong? What do you do? Good. Everyone should be saying this, right? I apologize, right? Right? It's not a trick question. Right? I apologize. And I'll say, so it's interesting, when you do something wrong and you apologize. So think about this. You're the offender. You apologized. In your mind, what's the next step? What's the next step? Right? We're all good. Right? We're good, right? We're good. And then it's interesting because sometimes the person you hurt is like, no, we're not good. We're not good. And then something amazing happens, which is the offender apologizes suddenly becomes the aggrieved party. We're not good. Did you see that sincerity in that apology? Do you see the moisture? There's like a little bit of thing going on over here on the side of my eye. What do you mean we're not good? Because I say sometimes we forget that when you fracture relationships, even if you apologize and you're sincere in your apology, when you break things, sometimes it takes time to put them together. And sometimes even when you put them back together, it's not the same as it was. So when the Chalban says over here, Nistalka HaShechina, it doesn't chas v'shalom mean the Shechina is gone. But the Churban represented a fracturing of the relationship. And we're together, but it's not the same. It's not the same. Right? It's just not the same. So, it's like lahavdil. Again, Chazal compare the Chet HaEgel, the Chet HaMeraglim, the Churban, to like a wife who commits adultery. Klal Yisrael was the wife who committed adultery. So a couple could overcome an adulterous affair. But is the trust the same? Is the bond the same? Is intimacy the same? Maybe. Well, Dr. Solomon's here, he'll give it. I'm not going to weigh in on this, right? But I'm saying, I'm sure you could get there. But maybe you never get there. The relationship could still be good. It could still be meaningful. But it might not be able to put it back the same. And certainly it's not going to be the same for a little while. That's what happens. So we fractured the relationship. It's not the same. It's not the same, but it's there. So let's finish this paragraph. He says, Nigniza ha-neshama. Now you could appreciate that phrase. What does it mean, Nigniza? The neshama was hidden. What does it mean the neshama was hidden? What was hidden? The sod. Right? The secret of my neshama is now hidden. Va'guf noser levado shochin ba'afar. And who's in control now? Right? Who's the dominant personality in life? The guf. Physicality. V'shever achar shever. Nifrad haguf l'rasisim. And unfortunately, there's breakage after breakage, adversity after adversity, difficulty after difficulty. And the body, which was once an intact body of Klal Yisrael, is broken into pieces. V'nosarnu avak dak, Pizurim ba'artzos tevel, lilo shchina, lilo his galus Hashem, lilo tiferes v'kavod melucha, lilo mikdash, lilo nevuah. Rabbi say, tell me, after a paragraph like that, don't you want geula? Don't you? So the contrast is so profound. Right, the Chalban, it tells us what geula is. What geula is. Then he told us we had it, we lost it. Here's where we are now. Here's where I will say, fine, one more line, then we'll stop. Yiridas paloim zu. Herchika ma'od es hanafshos me'etzem hayicholes l'tzar savolas Hashem ha'gedolah v'adira sheva mikdash u'lahasig es or haTorah b'ramamusa v'shal musa. Shabbos said it's very important. So I'll mention this, but then we'll stop over. We'll pick up with this next week in Mirat Hashem. The Chalban says that let's focus on a dramatic change. And there's been just a dramatic change in the way we experience Torah. Remember again, Chalban explained that Torah of Geula is like this luminescent Torah, that everything just has a clarity. It doesn't mean that I understand everything. I will say it doesn't mean, right, that the Pshat, the Mashiach comes, Geula comes, everybody's a Baki and Shas and Poskim, and everyone knows everything. But there's a clarity. So I don't struggle with the whys. I don't struggle with the whats. I don't struggle with the reward and the punishment and this and that. There's a sense of clarity. But with Galus, it's not just the Pshat that our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu has changed, and that our relationship with one another has changed, but our relationship with Torah itself changes. He goes on, he says, Nimtza pe'er adir bein avodas Hashem haragila b'yom hakamonim, or bein maimar hachayim begalus. There's a large chasm. There's just a large divide between what our avodas Hashem was in the time of Geula and what it is now. Lefichach, look what he writes. Hochrecha haTorah laredes mima'alasa. I will say this is so profound. The same way that Am Yisrael kind of suffers a setback in Galus, Torah does as well. Torah's been diminished. Now, what has Torah been diminished? Well, say, listen to this. Lehiskanis b'tzim sumrav l'nekuda garinis tzara. Torah is reduced, I will say, to garinis tzara. What's garinis tzara? A little kernel, a little seed. Dalid Amis Shel Halacha. Says the Chalban, if you notice something very interesting, the preoccupation with Torah and Galus is what? Is halacha. I will say, and it's very, isn't this fascinating? Right? Again, so much of our Yiddishkeit is halacha, and the truth is very much the preoccupation. One of the incredible things that's happened in Galus, I will say, is what? One of the most incredible things that happened in Galus was. Most incredible thing happened hands on happened in Galus. Right, Chalban. It's called Talmud Bavli. Talmud Bavli didn't happen in Eretz Yisrael, hence its name, Talmud Bavli. Right? And in fact, Talmud Yerushalmi is not considered to be as authoritative as Talmud Bavli. So isn't it fascinating that the greatest work that one of the great, right next to Tanakh, right, the great is Talmud Bavli. What is Talmud Bavli focused on? Talmud Bavli is focused on Daled Amos Shel Halacha. I will say because Torah in Galus becomes really about one thing, which is what do I need to do? Follow the rules. What do I need to do? Because in Galus, there are so many things that could derail me. There's a hyper focus on what are the rules, what's the framework, and what do I need to do. But says the Chalban, that's a garinis tzara. You see, the tragedy is, halacha, as important as it is one piece. Now, again, it's an indispensable piece. You can't be a Jew if you don't know what to do, right? So at the end of the day, I need halacha. But it's amazing to see how in Galus, so much of our Judaic experience is embedded in halacha, when in fact there's so much, I will say, but that's what Galus is. Galus, my Judaism becomes about how do I navigate through the tumultuous straits of life. In Geula, in Torah is so much more than that. Torah is about relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, relationship to the Am, relationship to one another. So we'll stop over here for tonight. We'll pick up, we'll say, because this yesod about that the Torah of Galus is the Torah of halacha. That's halacha. Halacha is the preoccupation of Galus. And what halacha becomes Bizmana Geula, and Mirat Hashem next week. Let's say Shkoyach.
can't listen to your kidneys. In Gullus, you can't listen to your kidneys. In Geula, you know what to do.
You know what?
Abraham just knew what to do.
It
wasn't. It was like automatic.
There's this clarity, there's this voice. This is why you could have it. It's also interesting because those things happen outside of Eretz Yisrael also, right? Moshe Rabbeinu sees a sneh. Avraham Avinu hears a lech lecha.
Right.
So there is these people experience this type of geula clarity, even though they're outside of Eretz Yisrael, which is unique. I don't know that that's replicable. Again. Yeah, we'll say Mariv. It's so good to see my friend.